I still remember the day I finished building my dream house in Kansas City. After 8 years of saving every penny from my software engineering job, I finally had a place to call my own. Then came that phone call. My mother, her voice dripping with confidence, informed me she was taking me to court for ownership of my house. She actually believed the judge would award her my property. The shock felt like ice water in my veins. How could my own mother betray me like this? The woman who raised me was now trying to take everything I had worked for. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button while I tell you how I fought back against my own mother in court. I grew up in a modest neighborhood on the outskirts of Kansas City. My father passed away when I was just 7 years old, leaving my mother to raise me alone. She worked multiple jobs to keep food on our table and a roof over our heads. From a young age, I learned to be independent, taking odd jobs mowing lawns and delivering newspapers to help with expenses. Though our relationship was complicated, I always tried to be a good son. My mother showed her love in practical ways, making sure I was fed and had clothes for school. But there was always something conditional about her affection. When I did what she wanted, things were good. When I showed independence, tensions arose. Still, I remained devoted, calling regularly and sending her money every month once I started earning a steady income. Money was always tight in our household. We lived paycheck to paycheck, with occasional disconnection notices for utilities when funds ran short. I remember wearing the same pair of shoes until they had holes, then patching them with duct tape until my mother could afford new ones. These experiences shaped my relationship with money, teaching me the value of saving and planning for the future. Despite our financial struggles, I excelled in school, particularly in mathematics and science. My high school teachers encouraged me to apply for scholarships, and I was fortunate enough to receive one that covered most of my tuition at the state university. College was still a financial challenge. I worked 20 hours a week at the campus computer lab and another 15 hours on weekends at a local restaurant. My schedule was grueling, but I was determined to graduate without crushing debt. After earning my degree in software engineering, I landed an entry-level position at a growing tech company. My starting salary seemed enormous compared to what my mother and I had lived on, but I remained frugal. Instead of upgrading my lifestyle, I continued living like a college student, sharing an apartment with 2 roommates, and driving my old car, until it finally gave out after 12 years. Every month I put aside 30% of my paycheck into savings. My colleagues teased me about my packed lunches and reluctance to join expensive happy hours, but I had a clear goal: home ownership. In a market where housing prices kept climbing, I knew every year I waited would make it harder to buy. For 8 years I built my savings and advanced in my career. When I finally had enough for a substantial down payment, I began my house hunt. I spent 6 months searching for the perfect property, one that balanced my desire for a nice neighborhood with my practical budget constraints. Finally, I found a 3-bedroom house with a small yard and plenty of potential. The previous owners had neglected some maintenance, which turned away other buyers, but allowed me to negotiate a better price. After closing, I spent weekends renovating, learning plumbing and electrical skills from online tutorials and the friendly staff at the hardware store. I painted every wall myself, installed new flooring in the kitchen, and landscaped the previously overgrown yard. This house represented not just my financial investment, but countless hours of physical labor. Every corner held a memory of my hard work. The day I finished the major renovations, I invited my mother to see my accomplishment. She seemed genuinely proud, commenting on the transformation and admiring my handiwork. I gave her the grand tour, showing off the updated kitchen, the comfortable living room, and the spare bedroom I had prepared specifically for her visits. During the following 2 years, my mother stayed with me several times. Each visit lasted a week or 2, and I enjoyed showing her around my neighborhood and treating her to dinners at local restaurants. I wanted her to share in my success, and to know that her sacrifices during my childhood had contributed to where I was today. When the pandemic hit, everything changed. My mother, who worked as an administrative assistant, lost her job as her company downsized. At 62, she struggled to find new employment in an increasingly digital workplace. When she called to tell me she could no longer afford her apartment rent, I immediately offered my spare room. The arrangement was supposed to be temporary just until she found another job or figured out her next steps. We agreed on 3 months. At first, having my mother around was pleasant. She cooked dinner occasionally and kept the house tidy while I worked from home, but small changes in her behavior began to emerge. She rearranged furniture without asking. She referred to the guest room as her room. When friends came over, she played the role of hostess, as if she owned the place. My girlfriend Jessica noticed these red flags before I did. After one Sunday dinner where my mother dominated the conversation and made decisions about dessert without consulting me, Jessica pulled me aside. She whispered, "Have you noticed how your mom acts like this is her house? She just told me about her plans to remodel your kitchen next spring." I brushed off her concerns, assuring her that my mother was just feeling comfortable and settling in. Jessica gave me that look I would later recognize as her being right. As weeks turned into months, the boundaries continued to blur. My mother invited her friends over for card games without checking if I had work calls. She criticized my choices in home decor, suggesting we replace my carefully selected artwork with her collection of porcelain figurines. When I tried to establish some ground rules, she became defensive, reminding me of all she had sacrificed for me growing up. The 3-month mark came and went without any mention of her finding her own place. 6 months in, I finally gathered the courage to bring up the subject of her long-term plans. We were having breakfast on a Saturday morning, when I gently asked if she had thought about when she might look for her own apartment. The moment I mentioned my mother finding her own place, her entire demeanor changed. Her face flushed red, her hand gripping her coffee mug so tightly I thought it might shatter. "What are you talking about? This is my home now," she said, her voice rising with each word. I was caught completely off guard. "Mom, we agreed this was temporary. I love having you here, but we both need our own space," I explained calmly, trying to diffuse the situation. She slammed her mug down, coffee splashing onto the table. "After everything I have done for you, this is how you repay me, by throwing me out onto the street. I raised you alone, Avery. I worked myself to the bone so you could have opportunities. I am not throwing you out," I clarified. "I am just saying we should start making plans. I have helped you for half a year now." Her next words stunned me. "This house should be mine anyway. A good son would have put it in my name from the beginning. All your cousins take care of their parents. Why are you so selfish?" The argument escalated, as she revealed she had been telling family members that I had bought the house for her. According to her version, the property was always intended as her retirement home, and I was merely staying there until she was ready to move in. Several relatives had apparently congratulated her on having such a generous son. Confused and hurt, I tried to explain that there had never been any such arrangement. I had saved for years, made every mortgage payment, and renovated the entire property myself. My mother dismissed these facts, with a wave of her hand, insisting that my success was only possible because of her sacrifices. Jessica witnessed part of this confrontation when she arrived to pick me up for lunch. After my mother stormed out of the room, Jessica took my hands in hers and spoke softly, but firmly. "Avery, this is not normal. Your mother is manipulating you. You need to stand your ground." In the following weeks, the situation deteriorated rapidly. I came home from work one day to find that my mother had moved my home office furniture into the garage, converting the space into what she called her crafting room. When I objected, she accused me of not supporting her hobbies and suggested I could work from the basement instead. Another day, I discovered she had removed family photos I had displayed in the hallway, replacing them with her own pictures. When I searched for my frames, I found them boxed up in the garage, some glass cracked from careless handling. The final straw came when she invited my aunt, uncle, and cousins over for a barbecue without telling me. I returned from a grocery run to find them all on my back patio. My mother was giving them a tour of her new home and discussing renovation plans for when Avery moves out. That evening, while looking for an important document in the study, I stumbled upon legal papers on the desk. My mother had been researching adverse possession laws and consulting with a property attorney. Notes in her handwriting detailed questions about establishing residency claims and whether verbal agreements about property could be legally binding. Sleepless nights followed as I grappled with this betrayal. The woman who had raised me, who I had financially supported for years, was now plotting to take my home. I lost weight. My performance at work suffered, and Jessica became increasingly concerned about my mental health. "You need to talk to a lawyer." Thomas, my best friend since college, insisted over beers one evening. "This is not going away on its own. Your mother is serious about this." I resisted at first, clinging to the hope that there was some misunderstanding, that my mother would come to her senses. That illusion shattered when I received an official letter from an attorney representing my mother. The document claimed that I had verbally promised the house to her, and that she had made significant contributions to the property, entitling her to ownership rights. Devastated and unable to concentrate on anything else, I began digging into my mother's past financial dealings. What I uncovered shocked me even more. 10 years earlier, after my father's death, my mother had briefly married a wealthy widower named Frank. Their marriage lasted only 18 months before he filed for divorce, claiming financial deception. I tracked down Frank's son, who revealed that my mother had systematically transferred funds from his father's accounts into her own, nearly $20,000 in total. Further conversations with extended family uncovered more troubling patterns. My cousin Gail confided that my mother had lived with her for a year, supposedly while looking for work. During that time, she had attempted to add her name to the deed of Gail's condo, under the pretense of helping with the mortgage. Gail had refused, causing a rift that led to my mother moving out abruptly. With growing suspicion, I began checking my mother's belongings when she was out. Hidden in her closet, I found a notebook containing detailed plans. She had sketched the layout of my house with notes about selling price estimates. A contact listed as Marcus appeared several times, with notations about payment plans and collateral guarantees. Through careful investigation, I discovered Marcus was a local loan shark known for charging exorbitant interest rates. My mother had apparently borrowed $30,000 from him, using the promise of my house as leverage. Her plan was not just to take my home, but to sell it immediately to pay off her debt to this dangerous man. The full weight of her betrayal crashed over me. This was not just about having a place to live. She was willing to steal my largest financial asset and put me at risk with a criminal. I could no longer deny what Jessica and Thomas had seen from the beginning. My mother was exploiting me, and had been doing so for years. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning. I recognized the county court seal immediately, my stomach dropping, as I tore open the envelope. As I feared, it was a summons to appear before a judge regarding my mother's claim to my property. She was seeking full ownership transfer and demanding I vacate within 30 days of the court's decision. That same evening, my phone began buzzing with messages from relatives. My mother had apparently told everyone that the court date was set and that her lawyer was confident of victory. She painted herself as the victim, a devoted mother whose ungrateful son was trying to renege on his promise to provide for her in her golden years. "You know your mom really needs that house." "Avery," my Uncle Paul texted, "at your age, you can start over easily. Think about what is right." My aunt called to inform me that my mother was already planning a housewarming party for after the court date. She had begun selecting new furniture and discussing renovation plans with contractors. The level of certainty she displayed was both infuriating and terrifying. Did she know something I did not? Had I unknowingly said or done something that could jeopardize my ownership? The stress became overwhelming. I began having panic attacks, something I had never experienced before. At work, I could not focus on my projects. At night, I lay awake, calculating the financial devastation of losing my home. Beyond the enormous monetary loss, the thought of losing the space I had poured my heart into was unbearable. Jessica found me sitting on the kitchen floor at 3 a.m, surrounded by property documents and receipts. She gently helped me up, made some tea, and held me while I finally broke down. "You cannot handle this alone," she said firmly. "You need professional help." The next day, she arranged a meeting with Sandra Williams, a property attorney with 20 years of experience. Sandra reviewed my documentation and listened carefully to the full history of the situation. When I finished speaking, she leaned forward with a determined expression. "Your case is stronger than you realize," she said. "You have clear documentation of purchase, solo mortgage responsibility, and all renovation expenses. Your mother has established residence, yes, but under clearly temporary circumstances with your permission. Her claim of a verbal promise is extremely difficult to prove, especially given the substantial evidence that you never intended to transfer ownership." For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. Sandra outlined a comprehensive strategy, not just to defend against my mother's claim, but to countersue for immediate eviction. "We need to be aggressive here," she advised. "Your mother is counting on your emotional attachment to her to prevent you from fighting back forcefully. We cannot allow that to happen." Thomas, who worked in banking, helped me collect additional financial records, proving that every penny of the down payment and mortgage had come from my accounts. He also found witnesses who could testify to hearing me speak about buying the house for myself and the extensive work I had done on the property. Jessica interviewed neighbors who could confirm that my mother had only recently moved in, and that I had always been known as the sole owner. She also helped me secure statements from contractors who had worked on renovations, all of whom confirmed they had dealt exclusively with me. With mounting evidence and growing confidence, I made a difficult decision. I would not only defend my property rights, but would expose my mother's history of financial manipulation. It felt like a betrayal of family loyalty, but as Sandra pointed out, my mother had already shattered that covenant. I filed a formal counterclaim demanding my mother vacate the premises immediately. The documentation included evidence of her previous financial improprieties, her dealings with the loan shark Marcus, and her explicit plans to sell my house. I also sought a restraining order, preventing her from making any changes to the property, while legal proceedings were underway. When the papers were served, my mother was furious. She burst into my home office, waving the documents and screaming accusations. "How dare you do this to your own mother? After everything I have sacrificed, you will regret this, Avery." I stood firm, looking her directly in the eyes. "I know about Marcus. I know about the loan. I know you plan to sell my house right from under me." Her face paled as I continued. "I have copies of your notebooks, Mom. I know everything." For a moment, shock rendered her speechless. Then her expression hardened. "You went through my private things. You have always been sneaky, just like your father." "I did what I had to do to protect myself," I replied calmly. "The court will see all of it. Every plan, every note about selling prices, every conversation with Marcus. It is over, Mom. You need to find somewhere else to live." She stormed out, slamming doors and making a show of outrage. That night, she packed a bag and went to stay with my aunt, telling everyone I had thrown her out. In reality, she knew her position had become untenable. The evidence against her was overwhelming. In the days that followed, I changed the locks and installed security cameras on Sandra's advice. My mother returned once demanding entry, but left when I informed her through the door that I had video surveillance running. The property was secure for now, but the emotional battle was far from over. The courtroom felt smaller than I had imagined. Polished wood benches, the subtle smell of lemon cleaning products, and the quiet murmur of legal proceedings created a surreal backdrop for the most important fight of my life. I adjusted my tie nervously as my mother entered with her attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit, who I later learned worked primarily with property flippers and real estate investors. My mother avoided eye contact, sitting rigidly beside her lawyer. She wore a conservative dress and had styled her hair to look more matronly than usual. I recognized the strategy immediately. She was playing the role of the vulnerable elderly mother wronged by her cruel son. When Judge Martinez called the case, Sandra presented our evidence methodically. She submitted the complete paper trail of my house purchase, from the initial savings account statements to the mortgage approval closing documents, and every payment made since. She showed before and after photos of the renovations I had completed personally, along with receipts for materials and testimonials from contractors. Most damaging to my mother's case were the notebooks we had discovered, outlining her plans to sell the property immediately after gaining ownership. Sandra had subpoenaed Marcus, who initially refused to appear, but changed his mind when faced with contempt charges. His reluctant testimony confirmed that my mother had borrowed money using the promise of my house as collateral. When it was my mother's turn to present her case, she claimed I had verbally promised her the house multiple times over family dinners. She testified that she had provided significant guidance and input on the renovations, suggesting this constituted a financial investment. Her attorney argued that she had established residency and had a reasonable expectation of continued occupancy based on family obligations. Then came the moment that changed everything. Under cross-examination by Sandra, my mother was asked about specific dates when these verbal promises allegedly occurred. As she provided answers, Sandra produced my work travel records, showing I had been out of state during several of these claimed conversations. When confronted with this contradiction, my mother became flustered. "Well, it might not have been exactly that date, but he definitely promised me the house," she insisted. Sandra then asked about the notebook containing plans to sell the property. My mother initially denied its existence until Sandra produced photocopies of every page. "This appears to be your handwriting, correct?" Sandra asked, pointing to notes about listing prices and real estate agents. "Those were just ideas," my mother stammered, "in case Avery wanted to sell someday." "And these communications with Marcus regarding $30,000 in loans secured against a property you did not own, were those just ideas too?" My mother looked at her attorney desperately, but the damage was done. Her testimony had been thoroughly discredited. After 3 tense hours, Judge Martinez called a brief recess to review the evidence. When court resumed, his decision was clear and unequivocal. He found no credible evidence of any promise to transfer the property, noted my clear and continuous ownership, and expressed concern about what he termed troubling evidence of attempted property fraud. The judge not only dismissed my mother's claim entirely, but granted my counter-petition for immediate eviction. She was given 30 days to remove her belongings from my home and ordered to pay my legal fees. As the gavel fell finalizing the judgment, I felt a complex mixture of relief, vindication, and profound sadness. My mother stood up abruptly and exited without looking at me, her attorney hurrying to keep pace. Outside the courtroom, I heard her telling my aunt that the judge was biased and that she would appeal. Sandra assured me that any appeal would be futile given the overwhelming evidence in our favor. The drive home was quiet. Jessica beside me, her hand on mine. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. "I won, but it does not feel like winning," I admitted. The house I had fought so hard to keep now seemed tainted by the conflict, every room holding memories of betrayal. In the days that followed, my mother arranged for a friend to collect her belongings while I was at work, avoiding any direct contact. Some family members took her side, cutting off communication with me. Others who had witnessed her manipulative behavior firsthand, or had been victims of it themselves, reached out with messages of support and understanding. The most surprising call came from my cousin Jack, whom I had not spoken to in years. "She did the same thing to my dad after their divorce," he revealed. "Tried to claim half his business, based on conversations that never happened. This has been her pattern for decades, Avery. It was never about you." Those words helped begin my healing process. I started to understand that my mother's actions reflected her own flaws and desperation, not my worth as a son. This realization, while painful, freed me from the crushing guilt that had plagued me since filing the countersuit. I spent weeks reclaiming my space, repainting rooms, rearranging furniture, and slowly erasing the physical reminders of the conflict. Thomas and Jessica organized a home again party, filling the house with positive energy and new memories. 6 months after the court case, I heard through family that my mother was struggling financially. The loan shark Marcus was pressuring her for repayment, and she had been forced to move into a small apartment in a less desirable area. Despite everything, I could not bear the thought of her in danger. Through my Aunt Linda, who had maintained relationships with both of us, I arranged to pay off my mother's debt to Marcus anonymously. I also set up a modest monthly deposit into an account she could access for essentials. It was not forgiveness exactly, but a recognition of our unbreakable connection, despite the damage done. We did not speak directly for over a year. When we finally did at my uncle's funeral, the conversation was brief and civil. There was no grand reconciliation, no tearful apology. Instead, we established a new relationship based on clear boundaries. I would provide limited financial support, but my home and personal life were firmly off limits. Through this painful journey, I learned that love does not require self-destruction. Setting boundaries is not selfish, but necessary for healthy relationships. The house I fought for became more than just a physical space. It symbolized my right to establish my own terms for my life and relationships. Today I live with a new understanding. Sometimes the greatest act of self-care is saying no to those who cannot respect your boundaries, even when they are family. The hardest battles we fight are often against those closest to us, but these are also the battles that define who we truly are. I wonder if any of you have faced similar situations with family members who crossed boundaries. How did you handle it? Your experiences might help others facing these difficult choices. Leave a comment below sharing your story, and do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences. If you found value in my story, please share it with someone who might be struggling with family boundaries. Thank you for listening, and remember that protecting yourself is not selfish, it is necessary.